Hello, everybody. I'm just adjusting the light here. How are you? It's Benjamin. I think we're online. Okay, it seems to be working now. Uh, it's Benjamin calling you from Tzfat, live on Facebook. I hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful week. I'm here, as you know, representing Ascent to have a little Thursday night for bringing. I hope that those of you who came looking for me Thursday night will have discovered that I actually gave my issue last week on Wednesday night, so it was a Thursday night for bringing on Wednesday night because it happened that I was going to be traveling all during Thursday and wouldn't be able to record. So I hope you caught up with that, and I just want to welcome you tonight, and I want to sing you a song. Okay. I'm going to start off. Yeah. Let's do this. Let's just reflect on a song. How does it go? How's it go? Think Peter, Paul, and Mary. Not such a Jewish combo, but they sang a magnificent song that expressed a beautiful Jewish idea, and I want to express that to you. So let me try and think how it's done. Amen. I'm sorry we had a little interruption. There was a phone call came in. And I don't take the phone calls, but I don't know how to stop them. If anybody, as I said last week, if anybody would like to help me with a little technical advice on how to do these little programs, then I'd really appreciate talking to you. Okay, so the song goes like this: a man will leave his mother. Oh no, I think it says father. A man will leave his father, and a woman leave her home, and they will travel on to where the two can be as one. There is love. It's called There Is Love, yeah? And I highly recommend that you look it up on the internet. I think the only version I know of it is Peter, Paul, and Mary, but you'll see an essential Jewish idea, which is reflected on the topic that I want to speak to you about tonight. We said during the week, we announced that the topic would be something to do with Jewish marriage tonight. So not about Jewish weddings as such, but Jewish marriage. So I'm hoping that you're all here and that you'll comment, if you care to, on anything that I say or anything I leave out. Please join me and let's make this a nice bang. And it won't, we generally start about 8:30 on Thursday night, but today's been a very disruptive and difficult day, as you probably know, in the state of Israel. While I won't refer too much to it, I do want to raise a glass and offer a blessing to the people in the south, the southern cities of Israel, especially in Sderot, who are suffering under missile attack tonight and the last day or two. Please God, they should all be well and safe, and that these matters should be settled in a good and positive way very quickly. And so we say l'chaim. I'll pour you a glass too. If you'd like to join me, this is for you. A little glass of vodka. Okay. So l'chaim, l'chaim, everybody. Oh, there's a question as to whether clinking glasses is a Jewish thing. I don't think it is, but l'chaim to you, and we should bless the people of Sderot and all the surrounding areas. They should have life, and they should have good health, and they should be safe. L'chaim, l'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol nihya b'dvaro. Thank you. So I did announce during the week that those who know me well know that I don't enjoy speaking to a topic that I tend to be a little bit spontaneous most times. My wife says that I stay up every night for an extra hour practicing my spontaneity, but that's not quite true. That's not quite how it is. But I suppose I did announce earlier in the week, surprisingly enough, that we'd have a topic tonight. And the topic tonight is something to do with Jewish marriage. Yeah, not with weddings, as I said, but with Jewish marriage. Now, the wedding itself, the Jewish wedding, of course, is very, very interesting. And it involves certain aspects that don't happen in other people's weddings, in non-Jewish weddings. I was at a wedding last week where they didn't have a chuppah. They did have a ring. They didn't have a certificate as such, a ketubah as we call it. They did have witnesses, and they didn't break a glass, which we do in our Jewish weddings. And perhaps we'll discuss the actual meaning those things in a wedding sometime in the near future. But tonight I really want to talk about marriage. What is Jewish marriage? What do we say? A man will leave his father and a woman leaves her home. They shall travel on to where the two will be as one. Yep. So what happened? We have the beautiful biblical story. As you all know, I don't often quote chapter and verse in any particular forum, but in Genesis, in Bereshit, the book of Bereshit, we're told that Adam is, that vodka's making me burp, so I better get rid of that burp by saying another l'chaim, l'chaim. In Bereshit, 27:1, I think the verse is, talks about that just before that, at the beginning of the world, God created the heavens and the earth, and then what did he create? On the last day before Shabbos, he creates man. Right? Now, what do we understand man to be? Man is, of course, some type of being that is in fact both man and woman. Just hold on a second. I'll be back with you in 5 seconds, okay? I have to just turn out some noise. 1 second, please. Okay, the noise is now shut out. I hope I'm still online. Okay, so we're told God creates man and woman as one being. Very strange to understand. We're not going to try and explain that tonight, but that says he created him, he created them, whatever the quote is, that he created the essential idea of a woman and a man becoming one. Yeah, we're told that most rabbis will tell you that the original man, that is Adam, was created together with his wife Eve, and they're actually one being, back to back. Yeah. And then, if I may use my own expression, God decided, wait a second, they're going to have difficulty communicating if they're back to back. Let's take them apart from each other and turn them around so they actually face each other and they can communicate. So we're told that God created this second being, and she's called an Ezer Kenegdoh. What is this? She's called a helper against him. Very strange expression, yeah? What does it mean to be a helper against him? You'd think if she's a helper, then she's not going to be against him. That doesn't seem to make sense. But maybe we can make some sense of it. The second thing is that the second quote from just a short while before that in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses, is that God creates 2 luminaries in the sky, right? There's no light. Although at the beginning it did say, let there be light. We don't know where that light came from. I think the light at the beginning of Bereshit, of Genesis, the light at the beginning, of course, is the light of spirituality, the light of godliness. But then, some days later, God creates something called 2 luminaries. Now, I should tell you that the general idea that I'm about to give you is really one that I learned from my son, who's a fine young rabbi living in Efrat. His name is Rav Natan Alexander. So I honor you, Natan. You're a great teacher, and I can learn much from you. We can all learn much from you. L'chaim, l'chaim. Nathan taught me this idea, and I think it's a beautiful one. Just after the beginning, a few days after the beginning, God decides to create luminaries in the sky. Luminaries, they're providers of light. What do we call them today? The sun and the moon. The sun and the moon, we understand from rabbinic commentaries, are exactly the same size as each other. 2 luminaries in the sky. According to the commentaries, the moon became very jealous of the sun and said, wait a second, again, I'm using my words. Wait a second, God, how can you have 2 kings in one kingdom? You can't have 2 kings in one palace. There's going to be competition, there's going to be fighting, there's going to be disagreement. So, it's not going to work having 2 luminaries the same size, the same as each other. God's response is to say, you know what? Again, I'm using my words, it's not a direct quote, but you know what, moon? You're absolutely right. And what does God do? Instead of building the moon up in some way, physically, God takes the sun and the moon and makes the moon smaller and the sun larger. right? And I guess the moon was a bit even more jealous. And yet we know from our Jewish learning that the moon is just as important, maybe even more important than the sun. Now, what am I talking about? The moon only shines when it's reflecting the rays of the sun, right? Even though it's smaller, the moon is in fact maybe even more important to the Jewish world than the sun. What happens with the moon? We take all of our chagim, all of our festivals, from timing in the movement of the moon, in the rotation of the moon. So the Pesach starts on the 15th day of the lunar month, and other festivals also start on the 15th or the 1st of the lunar month. Rosh Hashanah, which is only 4 or 5 weeks away, is going to start on the 1st of the lunar month, which is the month of Tishrei, that begins our spiritual year. It happens that almost every celebration that a Jew will carry out in the cycle of life is in fact related in some way, and certainly in its timing, to the position of the moon and where the moon is in its rotation and in its growing bigger and growing smaller. The other thing we notice about the moon is indeed that it gets bigger, it waxes and wanes, it gets bigger and it gets smaller. So the rabbis have often said this is in a way the way of the Jewish people, that sometimes we appear to be large and very powerful and sometimes much smaller and perhaps less powerful, or even it keeps changing, right? The moon brings to us all of the chagim and all of the day-to-day activities that we do. And of course, we know from other associations that the moon is feminine. Yeah, we see the sun as masculine, the moon is feminine. How do we know? Well, the moon has, of course, its cycle in the same way that women do. And we call the moon, in fact, a female. Female, that it's representing women. So the moon said, there can't be two kings in the one kingdom. There can't be two rulers of the sky at the same time. And that's right. So he's challenging God. He says to God, something has to be smaller. And what does God do? He says, okay, I'm going to make the sun bigger and the moon smaller. And yet the smaller moon, in fact, has more of an effect on the Jewish way of life than the sun, right? We count the days by the sun, but everything else that we do in the Jewish world is counted by the moon, is a reflection of the moon's progress through the skies. So we get away from having two kings in the one palace or two rulers in the one place. The Chagim depend on the moon. As we said, the moon is feminine. Day and night relies on the sun, but everything else pretty much on the moon. Now, what happens? The moon only shines, as we said, if it's reflecting the rays of the sun. So what is this all about? What is this all about? And I relate this to the idea of a husband and wife, as I've learned from Rav Natan that I mentioned before. In most families, there's normally a leader and a follower, yeah? In traditional Western, well, in Jewish society, certainly the man seems to be the leader, and yet the woman isn't pushed back, because the woman in a family relationship, in a marriage, has certain responsibilities that only she can do, or mostly only she can do. And so there's sort of a bit of a separation between the sun and the moon, between man and woman, that they sort of come together. They don't compromise, they complement each other. So the moon has certain responsibilities, the sun has certain other responsibilities. The sun lights up the day and gives us day and night, and the moon lights up the night and gives us the chagim and this aspect of femininity. And in fact, it's smaller than the sun. So there's something to be noted from that. What am I trying to get at here? I take pride in my wife. I take pride, and I don't say this in a demeaning fashion. My wife is an absolute achiever. What she achieves is generally something different to what I try to achieve, and I aim to get certain things done. The moon, we said, is a reflection of the sun, and very often in a family where one person is stronger or more the leader than the other, then you have this situation of sun and moon, so that one reflects off the other. Yeah, one can't survive without the other, and one reflects from the other. So God says on the fourth day, we're going to create this difference between the sun and the moon. He's got drunk. No, he's not drunk. He's pointing out something in Judaism that's very important, and that is in a marriage, we have the sun and the moon. We have one partner, one person who generally is the leader. You know, I get to sit at the head of the table at the Shabbos meal when we have guests. And then my wife, who appears to be a follower. When I sit at the Shabbos table and I look at the brilliant culinary things that my wife has achieved, when I hear the words that she has to say, I just admire her so much. And if, please God, she's a reflection of me, so be it. That's the way I'd like it to be. In Jewish marriage, we learned very early on that Isaac married Rivka, right? Isaac married Rebecca. And what does it say? What does it comment in the Torah commentaries about that? It says that Isaac married Rivka and they loved each other. So what is this about? I think that marriage, yes, it's about love. It's about caring. It's about recognizing the strengths of each other. It's about giving over to the other person more than you receive. But in the aspect of the Torah aspect, what are we doing? We're saying that Isaac married and then he loved her. So what are we saying? We're saying that love at its deepest, at its perfection, at its best, is not there necessarily under the chuppah, not there initially at the wedding ceremony. We have, more often than not, certainly amongst young people, they look at somebody, they see how beautiful they are, they spend some time together, they get to know each other a little bit, and then they marry. Yeah? Or they don't, right? When they're married, they hardly know each other. Who knows what I'm going to do when I take my socks off at night? Yeah. Who knows how clean a house is going to be? Who knows what I'm going to think, what I'm going to desire, what I'm going to want? Those are things that become learned over time. And this is the style of Jewish marriage, is to grow and grow and grow, so that love, which may be there in a more physical sense and an emotional sense at the beginning, grows and grows and grows and grows upon us as we get to know each other. Chapter, I think, 32 of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe reflects on love between two Jews. And he's talking essentially about Ahavas Yisrael, this general idea of loving your fellow Jew. And he says, and again, I'm using my words, not the exact words of the text, but he says something like this, that if you love somebody because of their physical looks or their physicality generally, what happens when that physicality changes? So you love somebody who's beautiful and shapely and can join you in a game of tennis. And all of a sudden, over a period of time, that person loses their shapeliness or loses the beauty of their facial features, or breaks their arm and they can't play tennis anymore. They can't go for a drink with you after tennis because, that was my Tuesday afternoon friendship with a guy called Ray in Sydney for many years. We'd play tennis, and then we'd go and have a drink together, and we had a sort of love between brothers. What happened when Ray was in a terrible accident and he could no longer run and he could no longer swing a tennis racket, you might say that the reason we had to relate to each other was gone. What was our reason to relate? We played tennis and we drank drinks. Yeah. Says the Alter Rebbe, if a love is based on a physical aspect of life, and then that physical aspect dies, then chances are the love's going to die. So what is Jewish love about? Jewish love is about recognizing all of the aspects of the soul of yourself and of the other person. And it becomes, instead of just being a physical desire for the two to be as one, yes, to come close to each other, to hug, to kiss, and what may come from that, there's also this aspect of getting closer and closer to the person by understanding them more deeply, who they really are. And who are they really? They're really God's creation that he created in order to be my Ezer Kenegdoh, in order to be my support, but also in a way against me. What does it mean? It means that in Jewish marriage, and again, these roles can be reversed, right? I'm not being, well, yes, I am being sexist because, in fact, Judaism is sexist in a beautiful and loving way. And that is, what do I mean by that? I mean, it separates, there are differences between a man and a woman, yeah? And those differences should complement each other. So what is this Ezer Kenegdoh? It means that my wife is my friend, my love, my support. We work together, we put money in the bank together, we spend money together, we enjoy each other's company, but she's also there to be a balance for me. When I get a little bit out of hand in my, sometimes in my enthusiasm, maybe I need to be a little quieter. Who's there to help me to know what I should be doing? My wife. Yeah, when I overspend, and many of us have the ability and this aspect of our lives when we go out, we see something pretty, we buy it, or we see something tasty, we buy it. Maybe somebody needs to recognize that maybe we don't have the money in the bank to buy that particular thing, and that role very often will fall upon the wife to say, wait a second, sweetheart, you know what, our electricity bill's about to come in, and I don't think you should be buying that extra suit or that extra pair of something. I don't think you should be buying new light fittings when what we've got is good enough and we're owing money. Let's wait until we have more money in our pockets. Let's wait until we're more prepared and ready to buy those new light fittings or to buy that extra suit. So we say that Judaism promotes this idea of, well, the wife not being a heavy disciplinarian, but being the one to help her husband to correct those things which he does that may not be the best for the family, for his children, for his wife, and or for the community around him. Yeah, sometimes some of us are a little bit too noisy. Yeah, we go out in the street and with our singing and dancing, which we're prone to do, sometimes we're a bit distracting, and somebody has to say, whoa, can you settle down a little bit, please, Benjamin? Or sometimes the reverse. You know, sometimes it's a husband who'll sit there not talking. You go to visit friends and he's silent and he's glum and he's sad. And maybe the wife needs to say, hey, do you want to perk up a little bit? Would you like to be a bit more friendly, a bit more lively, a bit happier? So Jewish marriage, I guess it's very sensitive also to emotional issues. But a good wife is really there to help her husband to do the good things. That's a quote from the Lubavitcher Rebbe in his Sefer called "The Wisdom of the called Towards a Meaningful Life." So what is it? A good wife is there to help her husband to think and do the right things. So this is a very supportive role and also a corrective role, yeah, that the average Jewish wife has. We also have in the Jewish world a place, and I wasn't going to mention this, but I think we do have to say it, even for something so horrible as divorce, yeah. Every now and then, a husband and wife simply can't get it together. They don't complement each other. Sometimes they actually oppose each other more often than they can support each other. And sometimes that leads, unfortunately, to the end of a marriage. And when it's necessary, it may even be the best thing. My son, I mentioned before, Rav Natan, was speaking to a non-Jewish group, several hundred business people a couple of months ago, and he was talking about very personal issues, Torah issues, and all of a sudden he said to the audience, you'll be surprised, but I can tell you one of the best things that ever happened was my parents divorcing. Now, this is from a young man who adores both of his parents and is very respectful of both his parents, but he recognized that there was a marriage there, there was a marriage of conflict. And a marriage of conflict is not necessarily the right thing. One hopes that one is never advised that divorce is the right thing, even though it's sometimes there to allow us to renew our lives. Anyhow, let's leave Let's leave divorce alone. We had this oh, sorry, that was another phone call. So we have this beautiful idea of marriage that indeed, without getting involved in all of the controversies of today, the idea of marriage was not initiated in the 20th century. It was not just some. I'm sorry, we keep getting interruptions of people calling in. If anybody has the technical knowledge, tell me stop that happening while I'm recording, then I'd appreciate knowing it. So I was saying that marriage is not something that just people enjoy, not something that just people think is a great idea, a great party, a great celebration. Marriage is in fact something invoked by God. Right? He said the two will leave their parents and they'll become as one. They'll join together as one. So this idea of marriage and the idea of weddings altogether is indeed a Jewish concept that we celebrate. It's the central theme, in fact, of the way we live, right? That Jewish life is about, where possible, getting together, husband and wife coming together in most holy ways, in a physical and a spiritual way. They should become together and become more and more like each other, but not giving away the essential individuality that a person has. So when I saw something on the internet today, I think it was a cartoon of a couple, of a bride walking down an aisle, right, obviously in a church, and the words coming from her mouth are the things that she's most deeply thinking of: I'll alter him, right? And we can see that in two different ways. That is not the role of Jewish marriage. The role of Jewish marriage is not to alter the other person. If you married somebody, it's because they have already that which you desire to be part of, that which you desire to share, that which you desire to join together and be one in the world. It doesn't mean that you or I have to give away the essential, in my case, the essential Binyamin, the essential person that we are. We're still, God wants us to maintain our separate but togetherness. Yeah. So that in the times that we're together, even when we're together, we're sitting at the Shabbos table and I can talk my head off and I'm talking, and then eventually I'll look up at my wife and say, what would you like to tell us, sweetheart? And she gives her own ideas. And sometimes those ideas, and her ideas and my ideas, are not exactly the same. They don't have to be, right? They don't have to be the same, because one of us is being the sun and one of us is being the moon. And what does that mean? It means allowing the other partner, whoever that other partner is, husband or wife, to reflect off me or me to reflect off her, and allowing that partner to shine. We should always remember this concept of the sun and the moon in marriage, that I'm not there to overwhelm you and you're not there to overwhelm me. And I am here. Part of the purpose of me being in this marriage is to invite you in to be an equal partner. Different, but equal. Yeah? We know that the responsibilities of a man in Judaism are vastly different from the responsibilities of a woman, but in fact, they're equal. And in fact, in Judaism, this is a big misunderstanding I think in the less religious world. There's a feeling that men are overbearing and that women have to play their part in the kitchen. This is not the concept of Jewish marriage, and yet, my wife prepares fabulous Shabbos meals every week, fabulous meals all the week. My wife lights Shabbos candles. My wife mostly does the cleaning these days because I'm a little bit disabled. I'm not able to help. But those are her sort of selected as her major responsibilities, and that I have responsibilities. Yeah, I got to write the checks, and not that I am the only one earning the money, but physically write the checks. I have to help. I have to, if you like, be the major decision maker in the family with her input, always with her input, and vice versa. Because the sun and the moon sometimes in Jewish marriage swap places. Sometimes I'm leader, sometimes she's leader, and that seems to be the way that we get on best in the world. And that seems to be what God wants of us. He made us in the way that we should leave behind our singularity and our individuality only to a small degree. When we leave our parents, when we go out into the world, sometimes we marry straight away. We go out to marry. And other times there's a space in between. But when we achieve this idea of marriage, we should remember that God separated Adam and Eve in order they should be one, in order they should be able to communicate well, in order that they should be able to cooperate well, in order that he should be the one who is always guided and protected by his wife, and he protects her, also in a physical sense. I hope this wasn't too confusing. I was a bit messed up tonight by the phone continuing to ring. But let's talk more about marriage. Let's talk more about weddings. And I encourage you all to come back to Tzfat. Or if you're here at the moment, let's see what it's like to live the life of a spiritually active Jew. Many of you are already doing that. We're trying to do that here. But let's always look. It's very hard when somebody comes, if you like, from an American university or a Sydney, Australia university background with sometimes a substantial Jewish education and sometimes none. And so it's very hard to know what's right and what's wrong according to Jewish law. And I'm not just talking about the rules, but about who we are, how we live. So I encourage you to continue to learn, to continue to add to your spiritual knowledge, and to continue to act in a spiritual way. When it comes to husbands and wives, that means unconditional love. It means unconditional support, one for the other. And as I said, I think I wrote this in a little column this week, but I'll say it again. I'll tell you a brief story to show you what this is about. Husband and wife traveling in the outback of Australia. He's driving and she's navigating. She has a map on her lap and she's saying, go this way, go that way, do this, do this. Yep. Eventually they come to a large fork in the road. And they're heading for a place called Ezer in the center of the country. They come to a large fork in the road, and she says, here, you turn left. And he says, oh, no, I'm pretty sure that it's straight ahead. She says, no, turn left. And he says, sweetheart, it's straight ahead. She said, right, go straight ahead. What happens is they go straight ahead, and of course he's wrong. And where do they end up? They end up 300 miles out of the way in Melbourne when they should have been at Ezer. What's the lesson to be learned from this? He looks at his wife and he said, why didn't you insist? You're the one with the map. Why? You know what's going on. Why don't you insist on being right? And she said, you know what? I'd rather be happy than right. And I think that's a wonderful lesson from this idea of Ezer Kenegdoh, this idea of balance, this idea of both contributing, but both contributing from each other's talents and each other's skills and each other's desires in order that the two should leave their parents' homes and they should come together as one. I bless you with happy marriages. I bless you with a happy time until you reach that decision to marry, and that we should only be blessed with all of the goodness that God provides through this wonderful idea of marriage, through this wonderful way of living life, which is called Jewish marriage. Bless you all with the joyful and wonderful week. I bless you all that you have a Shabbat Shalom, peaceful Shabbos. I know that some of you are coming to visit us this week on Shabbos. Please always make yourself at home at Ascent and at the Alexander's household. We're more than happy to welcome you. And again, I just like to raise the glass in the merit of those people who are suffering tonight in the south of Israel. Please God, their suffering should be over. And really, war should be no more. But if we need war, of course, we do it in order to get rid of the war. Oh, it sounds a bit confused, I'm sorry. Back to husbands and wives, right? There's another situation, brief situation I want to tell you about, and then I'll finish. There's a book by a Rav Arush. There's a number of books that he has on all sorts of topics, and one of those topics is about how to be a husband, how to be a wife. And he asked this very interesting question. He said, the man leaves home on a Friday morning. He leaves home on Friday morning, as I do every Friday morning. My wife says, listen, I need the day to prepare for Shabbos. Go out, leave me alone for a couple of hours, let me do Shabbos. When people ask on Friday night, they look at our Shabbos table and they see beautiful challah and they taste the challah and they say, wow, this is beautiful. Where'd you get this challah? And I always say, I made it. They say, what? You cooked the challah? You made the bread? And I say, yes. So yes, every Friday morning I leave home at 9 o'clock in the morning. There's no challah on the table. I come back at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and there's beautiful challah. So it's obvious. I left home and the challahs could get made. This is really a beautiful concept in Judaism, that we live out our responsibilities. I left home so that my wife could have the kitchen free, so that she could do the thing that she was doing, preparing for the Shabbos meal. I bless us all that we should have a beautiful Shabbos. And l'chaim, l'chaim. I look forward to coming back to you next Thursday night at 8:30. I hope I'll be a little bit more directed. I won't choose the topic in advance next week. It's always more fun if we go in a bit of a spontaneous way. L'chaim, l'chaim, thank you for joining me. And I look forward to seeing you either at a center or in my own home here in Tzfat sometime this week. God bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.